Hi and welcome to this video in the MRDCL Understanding Concepts series. In this video we're going to look at outputs in tables and the formats that you can put them in, and look at some of the post processes you can actually start to achieve by looking at the outputs you've got. So I've got a fairly simple set of tables here. There's just 8 tables in here, and if I run them, the default set that you will get will be a text output file. If I open the table's text, we'll get that file there, and that's a file that you can inspect in an editor of pretty much any sort. You'll need a fixed font when you're displaying that, otherwise the text might not appear quite as nicely lined up as they are here. So something that uses a fixed font would be good. And if you want to print those tables from a text format, there are tools in there to set up a print style. So under options here, you can set up a print style, loading the printer that you want, the fonts you want, and so on, so that it will print with any font of your choice and use the proportional fonts correctly when you print them, so that when you come to print your tables here, you can choose the print style that you've set up, and they will look pretty good when it comes to an output on a text page. When you produce a TXT file as your output, all of the pagination is controlled for you. So if a table is too wide, it will overflow onto the next page, both vertically and horizontally. When it's overflowing horizontally, it will find a convenient place to split that. So if you've got age, gender, region, social grade, and date of interview as the cross breaks on your table, it would find a gap in the headers there, if it can, to split the page so that your tables paginate in a sensible and organised way. Of course, if your banner was perhaps 500 brands that people might buy, and then it couldn't split it because it was just one big banner of 500 brands, it would just then arbitrarily break it where it couldn't fit anymore on a page. So that's a sort of brief introduction to tables in a text format. The more common use these days is in a spreadsheet, and if we look at the tables here and look at them in a spreadsheet, these are the tables you get in a spreadsheet, and they're much more sort of organised into cells, whereas a text won't wrap around with text. It will just automatically throw a new line. So a piece of text like female fits into one cell in a spreadsheet, whereas on a text file, if you only had 5 characters per column, it would break the word female up over 2 lines. Now, we don't want that word female split over 2 lines because it'll make it more difficult to work within a spreadsheet, and it's generally not what you want. Consequently, whereas pretty much all the formats for controlling the layout of a table will apply to a text format, many won't be relevant to the output in a CSV file. There's, for example, how wide you make the gap between each column. Well, that's irrelevant because gaps don't exist between columns in an Excel spreadsheet. They're just laid out side by side. So very many options that to do with layout of a table just don't apply when it comes to tables in a CSV format. Now you'll see here that every row of your table gets a little marker in it denoting what they are. I can take you through some of those. So BE is the beginning of the file. You'll find EN at the end of the file. JH is the job header. JF is the job footer. TB is the table number. BT is the title. BT is the base title. Column headings is CH. Column labels, the row title. BL for a blank row. RW for the whole numbers, the raw counts. PB for vertical percentages. And you'll find other options coming up when it comes to stats and printing horizontally. There's a full list of those in the help section on within the MRDCL program. What this means is that you can then, if you want to write programs or macros that read this CSV file, or indeed you can sort on these. So for example, if I only wanted to pick percentages and the title, I could use the filter tools within the data menu, and I could just show VTs and PVs, and I would just get those bits of text coming out, or those lines coming out. But as I say, it also means that you can write programs off the back of this that read these lines of data effectively and process them and output them in the way that you choose. So this gives you some flexibility to build standard systems. If you want help with that, we do have some routines that we can give you free of charge that will help you to organize sets of tables so that you can read out all the table titles, for example, and then put them into systems that show those as a list of tables, that maybe so that you can automate a chart, for example. So there's some of the tools that you can use. Now, the way you get that table is if we go into the STP file, you'll see here that there's a CSV2 option in the table, in the control stage of this run, and that is telling it to produce that output there. There are some other options in there, like CSV2R will round the figures so they appear the same as they are in the tables. And sometimes customers like that because you might get 33.3% on a table coming out in a spreadsheet, but if the table in the text file says 33% exactly, because that's what it's rounded to, sometimes it's nice to have that coming out as 33 exactly in the CSV file, so that your chart will match exactly what it says in the TXT file. But if you want accuracy and you wanted 33.33, for example, you would not use that option on the back there. And there's some other things that you can output with different run control parameters with different letters on the end. Again, that's covered in the help section in the manual. If you don't want your text tables, you can put in no tab, and that will remove the tables in the text format, and you'll just get tables in a spreadsheet format. Now that won't matter in a small set of tables, but if you're producing maybe hundreds or even thousands of tables, you may find that putting that in so that you suppress the text tables if you don't want them is a good way to go, because it will just reduce your run times as it prepares those tables. It won't waste its time producing the text file, which can be a few minutes maybe on a very big run. So that's two ways of working, that you get text tables and CSV table output. There is another way that you can work, which not many people use, but actually offers some real control. Now, I tend to only use this functionality when I've got a regular project I'm running every month and I want some figures perhaps to come out in a particular format. So if I want to output some figures to a particular style, let's say I want to get a report that looks like this. Let's look at the output first. So maybe I want to build my own table that looks exactly like this with figures, or exactly like this with percentages. Or perhaps I actually want to just drop out some figures in some random places so that I can put it amongst, in particular cells of a spreadsheet, so that a chart might automatically be generated. Now this might be quite a hard bit of work to do, or laborious piece of work to do if it's on a one-off project, but if it's a significant project that you're running every month and you want a whole load of figures always output to the same cells in the spreadsheet, this can be a really good way of working. So let's look at this and see how you can build a solution doing this. And the way you do it is by using the functionality in MRDCL that is available in the manip stage of MRDCL. Now I'm going to illustrate that first of all. I'm going to close this file. There was a little error when I run it. I'm going to illustrate this first of all by looking at my tables again. And let's take this figure here. Let's say we've got this figure here, 3, and we want to put it into a spreadsheet in a particular cell. Or perhaps we want the 60% figure. So let's look at how we can do that. Let's go back to our table first of all. Here it is. And the figure I'm going to pick is this 3 here and this 60%. Now it might look as though it's row 1. I happen to know that row 1 has been suppressed, and actually Bram B is in row 2. So it's blank suppressing the first row of this table, and Bram B is in the second row. So I want to get at the second row of the table. So I'm going to open up here and I'm going to say define my integer is table 1 row 2 column 0, and then I'm just going to list it so we can see that that's worked. Now this might look unusual syntax, but it's perfectly valid to pick up a value from a table. Nothing wrong with that, just saying table 1 row 2 column 0, and that's my integer. Now if I want to get the percentage, I can say that my percentage is the same figure, row 2 of table 1, column 0. This time it's divided by table 1, row 0, column 0, and multiplied by 100. And I'm going to list my percentage. And you'll note here I've chosen a DW because percentage might be at decimal places, so I'm getting the exact figure out. So with that syntax, you can see if I run this and look at my file, there's my 3 people and there's my 60% coming out in the report.txt file. So we're now going to use that type of structure to get a table out that looks a little bit more like the one that I showed you originally, which is a matrix of figures looking like this. So this is what I'm going to work on now. I'm going to produce this bunch of figures here and the percentages, those bunch of figures there. Alright, so I'm going to write some loops to do this. So I'm first of all defining a data statement that's got my text. So that's called data 100 and that picks up the 10 text. First of all, I'm going to list CSV, that piece of text I want at the top there that says table 2 as figures. Then I want to list the headings, which are the 10 brands. If you remember, that table was brand A to J by brand A to J, so I want to list the headings. I'm listing a blank cell first of all so that it indents it by 1. Let's just have a look at that once more. So for my first row of my output, I want that heading there, and now I want a blank cell there, and I want these 10 pieces of text here. So I'm listing them. Here they are. So I've got a blank cell, and then I'm looping 1 to 10, and in here I've got and in single quotes each of the 10 brands in the data statement 100. I'm ending that and putting a comma on the end. Now I want to list the 10 lines in this file here, but I also want the 10 columns going across here as well. Now I've got to do that, I've got to pick up the 10 figures. So I'm going to loop round 10 times. I'm going to pick up the 10 figures I want. I'm going to call them I1 to I10, and I'm getting them from the row that I'm working on, but also column 1 to 10. So I'm going to have 10 integers called I1 to I10, which are going to come from each row one at a time. And that's fine because I can overwrite them each time. Then I'm list CSVing the piece of text that goes into column A of my spreadsheet. And then within that, I'm looping around 10 times to get the 10 values that I've picked up. And then that's the end of it. Now, if I look at that in the listing file, it might look a little bit easier to understand rather than understanding my loop. So here we are. I'm listing all the brands here. Then I'm getting the 10 figures from row 1, listing them, getting the 10 figures from row 2 and listing them, and so on until I get down to row 10, and I'm getting the 10 figures there and listing them with the text brand J for the first one. Let's go back to look at this now. To get them as percentages, it's the same idea as we looked at before. We can see here now all I'm doing this time is I'm calculating the percentage by saying it's that row divided by row 0 times 100, rather like I did when I listed that data at the top. And now when I come to run this, it's going to make this table here for me, and I've actually got the figures coming out just like a table, but exactly to my format. And this could mean that I could drop individual figures here by putting blanks in where I wanted to. If I didn't want all these figures, I could drop figures into certain cells. And then, of course, there could be a chart in another worksheet or workbook that automatically picked up certain cells that I've listed out and would automatically generate charts. So it's quite a powerful tool. It's a little bit of work, but it's a very powerful tool if you want to automate something, perhaps in a tracking study, on a monthly tracking study. You could just drop out the figures you wanted into a spreadsheet and have some charts either in PowerPoint or Excel that are automatically reading those cells and automatically generating your charts. Well, I hope that was useful. That completes this video on output tables and what you can do with them from a spreadsheet onwards. Thank you.